Thank you for joining today's educational webinar with Cancer Support Community Los Angeles. I'm Abby Espinosa, the Program Coordinator at CIRCL, and I'm honored to welcome you to this week's webinar titled Nutrition for Survivorship. Before we begin, if this is your first time joining us, Cancer Support Community Los Angeles is a premier nonprofit organization providing vital social and emotional support to families facing cancer, including patients, caregivers, and their loved ones, all at no cost. Our programs include support groups, healthy lifestyle classes, social activities, and educational programs such as this one. If you would like to learn more about our services or watch past webinars, please visit our website at cancersupportla.org. Before I introduce today's speaker, please note that your video and microphone are automatically disabled for this webinar. Please enter questions for the speaker into the Q&A feature found at the bottom of the Zoom window. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. We may not be able to get to all of your questions today, but we'll get to as many as possible. Please use the chat feature to share comments and resources with other participants or to ask questions of CIRCL. We ask you to limit chat comments to information relevant to this topic. And to introduce today's speaker, Stephanie Cramer has been a registered dietitian nutritionist since 2005. She is employed with Cedars-Sinai, where she has been working for the past 9 years. Her current role as clinical nutrition coordinator for Cedars-Sinai Cancer, Center for Integrated Research in Cancer and Lifestyle, enables her to work with patients before, during, and after their cancer treatment. It gives me great pleasure to welcome today's speaker, Stephanie Cramer.
Hi, thank you very much, Abby, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Abby said, I'm Stephanie Cramer. I'm a registered dietitian. I have been a registered dietitian for 20 years this year, and this will be my 10th year at Cedars-Sinai. And I have a pleasure to work in the Cancer Center, but more specifically in the Center for Integrative Research in Cancer and Lifestyle, where I get to work on several clinical trials that we have going right now that are related to nutrition and cancer. And next slide, please. So I wanted to welcome everybody today. Thank you so much for joining. I am very excited to be presenting to you all today. This month is actually my 9th anniversary of being a breast cancer survivor. So this talk is close to my heart. And during treatment, I came to the CIRCL for many of the different services. So I am honored, and it's a pleasure to be here and speak to you all today. I wanted to include this picture. It was introduced to me by a wonderful yoga therapist, Allison Crowley, who I met through one of the Cedars yoga programs during my treatment. And it's titled Expansion, but basically the artist had put together this sculpture and then dropped it and it cracked, and then she put it all back together. And they put a light structure or a light installation on the inside. And even with cracks, we still radiate our light. And there's a quote that as long as we don't push on the walls as our surroundings, we may never know how strong we really are, by Paige Bradley. So I thought or I wanted to include that today because we never know how strong we really are. So thank you again all for being here. And now let's talk about nutrition. And you can go to the next slide, please. So today we're going to explore some simple evidence-based ways to support your health. And we will cover 10 of the American Institute for Cancer Research's recommendations that focus on what you can put into practice today. Next slide, please. And so we'll first talk about why nutrition matters. So the definition of survivorship, according to the National Cancer Institute, is in cancer, survivorship focuses on health and well-being of a person with cancer from the time of diagnosis until the end of life. So these recommendations today can definitely be recommendations that you can start applying at any time. But for the purpose of this talk, it will be kind of focusing on survivorship, like once treatment's finished, as some of the nutrition recommendations may be a little bit different if you're currently going through treatment or going through surgery. So you may want to see a dietitian for more personalized recommendations for that. So I like to look at it as survivorship as a new chapter, not quite the end of your journey, because there's a lot of things that we can do to help support our health. And the good news is that scientists estimate that around 40% of cancer cases could be prevented by reducing exposure to cancer risk factors. And some of those include diet, weight, and physical inactivity. I do want to say that there's definitely not just one thing that causes cancer. So there's not necessarily one thing in your diet that would cause cancer or necessarily cure cancer. But there's definitely several things that you can eat that will support your health and your immune system that we'll review. Let's see. And okay, next slide, please. So overall, to lower cancer risk, the American Institute of Cancer Research for Cancer Prevention, they advise eating a mostly plant-based diet. So some people, when they hear plant-based diet that I've worked with, think that you have to only eat plants or just go vegetarian or have an all-vegan diet. But a plant-based diet, that's not necessarily the case. In a plant-based diet, the diet contains plant foods, for example, like vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and beans. And these specific foods contain a variety of cancer fighting or fighters, including vitamins, minerals, fiber, and phytochemicals. And so the phytochemicals in these foods are natural occurring compounds, and those phytochemicals help protect the plant from infections and give plant foods their color, aroma, and flavor. And next slide, please. And so the phytochemicals have or several different functions. They help stimulate the immune system. They actually block substances that we consume from becoming carcinogens. They also have been shown to reduce inflammation. They also help prevent DNA damage and help the DNA repair in our bodies. They also reduce oxidative damage to cells that may spark cancer and also slow the growth rate of cancer cells. So these were all findings in the laboratories that they found with these specific phytochemicals. And next slide, please. And so for the recommendations, the plant-based diet focuses on a diet that's rich in the whole grains, vegetables, fruit, and legumes. So the recommendation is to try to eat at least 3 ounces daily of whole grains. So that could be a slice of bread, a half a cup of cooked rice, cereal, or pastas. So any of those, so you could include 1 at each meal, and that could help you get your serving of whole grains for the day. Also, vegetables, to try to aim for 2 to 4 cups daily. And you can see from the picture that to try to fill your plate with 2/3 or more of the vegetables, fruits, or whole grains, and then having 1/3 or less of your plate with animal proteins, and preferably more lean animal proteins than the higher fat ones. And then also to aim for about 1.5 to 2.5 cups of fruit daily, and also the legumes, 1 to 3 cups or more per week. And so legumes will you can get from beans and peas as well. So there are, as you can see, still room for that looks like chicken on the plate. So you could still have a little bit of chicken, but still including the plants. So like, for example, rice is obviously still is a plant. So it can still be a healthful food. Okay, next slide, please. And then this slide, just 1 it's a little hard for me to read on here, but if you can kind of see, I hope you guys can see it. There's I really like this handout because it shows all the different types of foods that we can eat, and they have all different compounds in them. And then there's possible protective actions that they have that they can protect against cancer. So, for example, apples have been shown to decrease or slow the development of certain tumor cells for colon, lung, and breast cancer. And so all of these findings were in laboratory studies. Also berries, all the berries, blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, and strawberries. Those have all been shown to like decrease DNA damage in our cells, and also decrease the growth and the growth and stimulation of certain anti-cancer cells. The cruciferous vegetables as well, broccoli, cauliflower, collard greens, all of those have also been shown to have cancer fighting components as well. Also coffee. Sometimes they'll recommend to not drink coffee, maybe for caffeine, but in general, coffee can be help as a cancer fighter. Also, the dark leafy greens help inhibit growth of certain types of breast cancer cells. And then I also wanted to mention soy. It has been shown that up to 3 servings of soy a day can be safe and helpful for people that have had breast cancer and just for health in general. So soy is definitely something that is a good source of protein as well. And next slide, please. Yeah, I apologize that you can't read these better. It showed up better when I was putting the presentation together. But these are some other foods that are also have shown to have some cancer-fighting properties. So flax seeds. Flax seeds can be an easy thing to add, like add to yogurts or other foods. Also garlic and onions, chives, those have been helped to or shown to reduce carcinogens' ability to initiate cancer. Grapefruit as well. And then squash has been shown to also help control cell growth and stimulate the destruction and decrease growth of certain cancer cells. And tomatoes as well, with the carotenoids that they contain. And tea as well has a lot of different properties, specifically green tea, matcha. And walnuts as well have some polyphenols in them that have shown to be beneficial. We're doing a study right now at Cedars on walnuts and prostate cancer, and we're almost finished with the study, so we'll be able to analyze the data soon. But people eat 2 ounces of walnuts before their radical prostatectomies, and so we're going to see if there was any change in their tumor. And then also whole grains. So I know sometimes I think carbohydrates get kind of a negative, maybe people don't like to eat carbohydrates for different reasons, but they do contain, if you eat ones with whole grains, there are a lot of, very beneficial components to the whole grains, including fiber, which we'll talk about shortly. Next slide, please. So fiber is also a substance that we eat that is also has a lot of healthful properties. So the aim is to get at least 30 grams of dietary fiber each day as part of a healthy eating pattern to lower cancer risk. And there was a study that showed that every 10-gram increase in dietary fiber, the intake was associated with a 7% reduction in the risk of colorectal cancer. So that's a pretty significant, out of all the nutrition studies, that one's one of the most significant findings with fiber. Next slide, please. And so there are two types of fiber. There is the first type is soluble fiber, and that's the type of fiber that you eat. It will attract water and becomes more of a gel. So those are in foods like apples, bananas, beans, cherries, berries, and oats. A lot of foods contain both soluble or may contain soluble and insoluble fiber, but these foods are more soluble fiber. And then the other type is insoluble fiber. And the insoluble fiber is the fiber that doesn't digest in the stomach. So think like the skins and peels of fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds. Those are the whole grains. So it's good to have a combination of both of those in your diet. The soluble fiber acts as kind of a sponge, and so it can absorb the excess cholesterol and excess hormones and other toxins that we may have ingested. And then the insoluble fiber acts as like a broom and can kind of sweep the food through. So kind of helps to keep everything moving through. So to get a combination of those throughout the day is recommended. And so they do recommend the 30 grams per day. The average for Americans, or the average intake for Americans, is about 12 to 15 grams per day. So if you are looking to increase your fiber to the goal of 30 grams per day, you would want to do that slowly. So maybe increasing no more than about 5 grams of fiber per day, and then drinking plenty of water so that you can help with digestion. Because if you start just eating a lot of fiber, it could be a little hard to digest at first. And so there are the compounds and substances that we can have that have a positive influence on our health, so that we can include these. But there are also things we can do to help reduce some of the risk factors. So next slide, please. And so the Western diet pattern tends to be Americans tend to consume an excess of calories, saturated in trans fats, added sugars, and sodium, while falling short of essential nutrients like vitamin D, calcium, potassium, and fiber. And so, like I mentioned, the average American on average needs to increase their fiber consumption by 12 to 15 grams per day to meet the 30-gram recommendation. So with the foods that we talked about, it's kind of figuring out ways that you can add those foods into your day, so that you are getting those essential nutrients like the vitamin D and calcium and potassium and fiber. Next slide, please. And so to reduce some risk factors, some things that you can do nutritionally are to limit red meat to no more than 12 to 18 ounces per week. So again, red meat can still be part of a plant-based diet, but it would just be the portion of red meat you're eating would be smaller compared to the others. And also avoiding processed meats like bacon, sausage, smoked meats, lunch meats, and hot dogs. The main thing with those is the high amount of, or not all of them, but like lunch meats, the high amount of sodium and also nitrates. So there are brands that you can find that have lower amounts of those, but in general, it's best to kind of try to avoid those. And then also limiting fast foods and other processed foods that are high in fat, starches, and sugars. So the foods that tend to be like that you might get at a fast food place in general tend to be high in fat, sugar, in starches, and then lower in those essential nutrients that we mentioned, like vitamin D and potassium and fiber. And the other recommendation is to limit drinks that are sweetened with sugar. So trying to drink mostly water, coffee, tea, things that don't have added sugar to them. The dietary guidelines for 2025 recommend no less than 10% of added sugars to your diet. So in general, kind of also just looking out for foods that have added sugars that could potentially kind of add up over time. And also, let's see, avoiding alcohol. The recommendation is for women not to drink more than 1 glass of alcohol a day, and then for men, no more than 2 glasses a day. But overall, the recommendation is to avoid alcohol if possible, to be most helpful. And next slide, please. And so some other things with activity that we can do. So the recommendation is to aim for a healthy weight. I will say that I would recommend not necessarily focusing on your weight, but more of your body composition. So as we get older, we start to lose our lean body mass. So keeping up with strength training, the recommendation is to try to get at least 150 minutes of moderately intense physical activity per week. So about 30 minutes per day, 5 days per week. And also 2 days of strength training as well. So definitely kind of trying to keep up your muscle mass. And I read something recently. There was a study that they found that people, and I need to look how long they did it during the day, but for every 45 minutes, they did 15 squats, and it was similar to a 30-minute walk. So I'm going to assume it was maybe like in an 8-hour day, but I like this because the idea is to kind of to not be sedentary and to keep moving throughout the day. So depending on how your energy is, after treatment, you may feel tired. So even just getting out and going for like a 10-minute walk 3 times a day until you can kind of build up your strength again is still helpful. And so I like, they called them exercise snacks. So you don't necessarily have to do everything all at once, but if you kind of break it up throughout the day and kind of try to keep moving, that still had a healthful effect on people's blood sugar, which is beneficial because we know if you have high elevated blood sugar, that can increase inflammation, and inflammation can increase your risk of cancer recurrence. So definitely keep moving can definitely be helpful for that. And next slide, please. And so the next topic I wanted to talk about is supplements. So it was found that cancer survivors obtain more nutrients from supplements, but less from foods for most nutrients. And so there was an excessive intake of vitamin D, B6, niacin, calcium, magnesium, and zinc, and then an inadequate intake of folate, niacin, or folate, copper, calcium, and phosphorus. So there was kind of a little bit of an imbalance. And so the American Institute of Cancer Research recommends and advises to get nutrients from food as much as possible and not supplements. And next slide, please. We'll kind of talk about why. It is possible to get too much of one nutrient or phytochemical from a supplement. There have been some studies that have found high doses of supplements to be harmful. There was a a trial where they gave beta carotene and retinol to people that had lung cancer or an increased risk of lung cancer. And they ended up, or it was, they gave the beta carotene to smokers and they ended up having an increased risk of lung cancer. And so they decreased or they stopped that trial. And then there was another trial where they gave selenium and vitamin E for cancer prevention. And it ended up increasing the risk of prostate cancer. So they ended up stopping that too. So there's still um, a, there's still a lot we don't know about single like high doses of nutrients. And in your when we eat them or get those nutrients in our food, it's harder to eat that amount that you would get from a single like supplement. So when you get nutrients from plant foods, you also get many other beneficial compounds and not just the ones found in the supplements. So there are synergistic effects between nutrients. And so that is, and there's still probably a lot that we don't really know yet. So trying to get them from food is the recommendation. And also in the United States, supplements are not regulated the same way as food and drug products. So kind of one of the concerns can be inaccurate labeling, contaminants when they're processing. In the United States, the poison control centers received over 70,000 calls in 2019 due to supplements and herbal preparations and homeopathic treatments. And more than 7,000 people needed treatment at healthcare facilities. So we just recommend having caution with supplements. And if you are deficient in something like, for example, vitamin D, then that's definitely a good conversation to have with your doctor to replace and take a supplement when you're low in something, but not necessarily to just take a supplement to get your nutrients from. And next slide, please. So I wanted to give just a few ideas on ways you could add some like colorful plant foods to your meals. So for breakfast, you could have oatmeal and then add blueberries and apples to that, and that would give you the oatmeal, the blueberries, and the apples would all have a good amount of fiber. So that would definitely be a high fiber breakfast. And then snacks, you could have nuts and a piece of fruit like a pear. Nuts would give you some protein. So if you have a snack where you eat protein with something else, the protein might help you feel a little more satisfied than if you just ate the pear alone. And for lunch, you could do a vegetable bean soup. The beans would give you some protein. And also for dinner, you could have a green salad, and then you could add different peppers and carrots to the salad to add some other fruits and vegetables, or not fruits, vegetables. Next slide, please. And I included this. So if you are somebody that just doesn't love fruits or vegetables, it could be a good idea to try eating what's in season with fruits and vegetables, and then also possibly shopping at the farmer's market. We are fortunate if you are in Los Angeles, we have many farmers markets, and we are very close to the Central Valley, which produces a lot of our fruits and vegetables. So they may taste a little bit better if they're more in season. And they also you might be able to find them cheaper, which is obviously a good benefit now. But that also could be a good way to just try different vegetables or fruits just by eating ones that are currently in season. And next slide. And so this is the last slide. So just some practical tips. I think just having some easy meal ideas, not really having to overthink it, keeping things simple, just eating foods you like. Those are some examples of like a power bowl or a smoothie. I think smoothies can be great if you're either kind of busy. I know a lot of people like to have smoothies in the morning before work. If you can kind of take them on the go. Also, little snack plates can be kind of fun. And then other, just kind of, I mentioned movement before and getting physical activity. It can definitely be things that you enjoy doing. So any kind of movement is good for your body. So like we mentioned, walking, stretching, yoga. It doesn't have to necessarily be going to the gym. And then you could probably find YouTube videos of different stretching and stretches and yoga as well. And then another tip would be mindful eating. So kind of listening to your body's hunger and fullness cues. When you are eating, trying to kind of just focus on eating and maybe not work if you're working, kind of setting aside time to just sit down and enjoy your food and not kind of work through lunch, or if you're eating dinner, turning off the TV and just kind of enjoying the meal. And then paying attention to if you are full, or if you're eating because you just are maybe bored, or if it just tastes really good and you just want to keep eating. So kind of just checking in with yourself when you're eating too. And then also just lastly, the importance and joy of eating, and taking pleasure in eating. I think it can be hard after a cancer diagnosis to speaking for myself, there can be a fear around certain foods. So just figuring out what you enjoy eating, and that, food you can share with other people. And food can be a really important part of just joy and pleasure in our lives. So you don't want to restrict yourself with things that you enjoy eating. And with that, next slide, please. Thank you all for coming. And I can't see you, but I really appreciate you all being here. And that is the end of the talk. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Stephanie, for your meaningful presentation. We invite people to put questions into the Q&A chat. So
Okay.
please put them in the Q&A and not the chat.
Okay.
And we will go ahead and get started with those. Someone said that they eat 3 ounces of whole grains a day. That amount of carbohydrates makes them bloated and gain weight. Is there a way they can change that?
It could be the type of carbohydrates that you eat. It could be a good idea to maybe see a dietitian, and they can kind of work through the specific foods that you eat, because there are ones that potentially could be harder to digest depending on just any treatment you've gone through. So if you kind of talk to your doctor, they could probably refer you to a dietitian. But it wouldn't necessarily just cause like bloating or weight gain.
Perfect. Thank you. And someone else is asking, is yogurt okay for estrogen receptor positive breast cancer survivorship?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and Greek yogurt has a little bit more protein than the other yogurts too. So if you like Greek yogurt, that's a good way to get in a little bit extra protein.
Thank you. And someone is asking, is spicy food bad for a person with cancer?
I would say that would be probably more of a preference. The spicy foods, depending, like if you're going through treatment, it can kind of maybe cause some mouth disruption, mouth sores. But I think it's more of a preference if you're feeling like if your digestion's feeling good and you're like feeling like you're kind of able to eat normal, like if you ate spicy foods before and now you want to eat spicy foods, and yeah, they're definitely not bad, but it just might be they could aggravate something if you're going through treatment.
Got it. Thank you. And then what is your knowledge and opinion in regards to sugar intake?
Well, in general, it's good to like watch your overall sugar intake. So that's where they recommend trying not to get more than 10% of added sugar in your diet. Sugar, carbohydrates in general are our main source of energy. So our brain does need sugar, but there are different types of sugars. So getting sugar from complex carbohydrates that have fiber in them, from the whole grains and the fruits and vegetables, would be a more nutrient dense form versus something like a soda, where you get sugar, but you don't really get all the nutrients that you would get from other foods.
Got it. Thank you. And then I know you briefly talked about yogurt, but is dairy also good for survivors?
Yeah, so like cheese and yogurt specifically can have probiotics in them that can be good for our gut health, and so those definitely can be good. I will say with yogurts, just that could be a food you might want to just watch with the added sugar, because some of them with the added fruit can have quite a bit of added sugar. But if you did plain yogurt, you could also add you could add fruit to it, or you could add even some honey to it to add some like natural and more natural sweetener, if you don't like the just plain Greek yogurt or plain yogurt.
Thank you. Um, and there's a question regarding fruit juice, just all natural juice. Is that too much natural sugar?
No, I mean, I think it's better if you're gonna have juice, having like 100% juice, one that doesn't have the added sugar. But I think, yeah, adding water or ice to it to kind of dilute it a little bit. But if you are juicing, if you're juicing something, you're going to be kind of removing all the fiber, and so it's going to be more concentrated with sugar. So just keeping that in mind. So you aren't getting all the fiber if you ate the watermelon, but watermelon juice could still be okay. But just knowing that it does have sugar in it is just something to keep in mind. And then thoughts on Diet Coke. I mean, Diet Coke isn't going to provide any added calories, so it would be better than if you were drinking like regular Coke with the added like high fructose corn syrup like all day. Um, in general, water is kind of the best for hydration, but so that's what I would recommend it for your date. Like most of your hydration would be water, but some juice and Diet Coke is here and there is good too.
And then what foods are best for low WBC and RBC?
It's hard to say specifically, but like in general, getting enough protein and kind of eating enough will help to kind of replenish those cells. But there's not necessarily like one specific food, but getting like a lot of nutrients in general can help.
Thank you. And then can you have milk if you have had breast cancer?
Yes, you can have milk. Yes. The hormone levels in milk shouldn't wouldn't they monitor those levels, so that shouldn't increase, but in general, they recommend like about 3 servings of dairy a day. So I wouldn't recommend like 8 glasses of milk or anything, but milk is definitely a good source of protein.
And then what are some foods you should avoid for HER2 positive and estrogen receptors?
I for this one, I'm gonna say it's better to actually, rather than avoid, to like make sure you're getting enough fiber, because fiber is gonna help with excess estrogen, and it will help kind of excrete that from your body. So I would say like fiber specifically. I can't think of like a specific one like for HER2 positive. But in general, fiber, I think would be important as well.
And then
And
does the AICR discourage fish in a diet?
no, no, they recommend still just the 1/3 of your plate could be like fish would be a good source of lean protein. And you can also get like the omega-3 fatty acids too. And I saw one for eggs. Eggs are good too. Eggs are a good source of protein, easy to digest, and they have like a good source of iron as well.
Thank you. And what foods should one avoid because of estrogen, specifically endometrial cancer?
That's kind of another one with estrogen. There, it's not really that you need to avoid any specific foods, but getting enough fiber in your diet will help with your hormones and getting just enough like nutrients in your diet overall will help with that. For triple negative breast cancer, like similar, there are some studies like saying to help control blood glucose with triple negative breast cancer. So if your blood sugars are elevated, kind of maybe seeing a dietitian and getting help getting that under control. Also, like cholesterol in general too, but I would say for triple negative breast cancer, making sure your blood sugars in general are kind of under control. So so in general, kind of the same kind of diet pattern that we were talking about.
Perfect. And then someone else is asking, what about intermittent fasting? Is that safe for post-breast cancer?
Yeah, that's it's I would say it's safe for post breast cancer. There is a study where they looked at breast cancer patients and they looked at the overnight fast. So people that fasted for 13 hours overnight had a decreased incidence of breast cancer reoccurrence. So if they stopped eating at around like 5 or 6 at night and then didn't eat for 13 hours, that was beneficial. So I know there's different intermittent fasting kind of regimens, but that can be one where we kind of do just every day for our health. And if you kind of think about it as and also try not to eat 2 hours before going to bed, because when you go to bed, it's kind of your body's like process kind of repairing and cleaning and remodeling itself. So if it has food to digest, it's kind of taking away from doing those things. So so trying to have that 13-hour fast overnight and then trying to not go to bed 2 hours before eating dinner. And having like a little, some people kind of need a little snack sometimes before bed, and that's okay. It would be more of a like, don't eat your biggest meal like in the evenings, which is kind of tends to be how like we kind of eat in America. We are kind of busy all day and then have our biggest meal at the end of the day. So it would be also if you can kind of flip flop that and eat more earlier in the day and eat less later in the day. That's been shown to kind of be beneficial too for health.
Perfect, thank you. And we invite participants to put any other questions into the Q&A. And we did receive a few questions during registration, so I will ask a couple of those, but how much protein should one consume to maintain muscle mass?
So the recommendation is to at least get 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram per day, but it would definitely depend on how active you are. So it could be up to like 1 gram per kilogram or 1.2 grams per kilogram. It could be kind of a range, but you want to at least get 0.8 grams per kilogram.
Perfect, thank you. And another person said there's so many different studies on different types of diets, such as carnivore, Mediterranean, keto. Which is best and what do you suggest?
Yeah, I think like there's a lot of different like diet patterns. So I think kind of there isn't one that's going to be the best, but a diet that includes plants so that you can get all those compounds that have and all the nutrients that you need would be the best. I know they study the Mediterranean diet a lot, and in California, we kind of have our climate is kind of similar to the Mediterranean, so we are able to kind of eat foods like that. In other areas of the world, not everybody can eat a Mediterranean diet. So the principles of the Mediterranean diet are they do eat a lot of plants. They have a lot of olive oil as their fat, so low saturated fat. And they do eat a lot of fish, and their dairy consumption is in the form of like cheese and yogurt, not like a whole lot of milk. But so I don't think that there's one diet that is the diet for everybody. So I think there's like different for different situations. But I think if you're including a lot of plants in your diet, that can be a good way to keep healthy.
Thank you. And do you have any suggestions on how to fight cravings for salt and carbs from chemo and steroids?
I not specifically, but I think if you can if you can find something that will can kind of satisfy your craving, that's not really a good answer, but because if you restrict something completely, then you might crave it more. So if you can like give yourself like something that might help you, and then but also just not restrict overall, so that you are, because sometimes if we're not eating enough food, we can sometimes crave carbohydrates because that's our kind of main source of energy. So kind of just looking at overall what you're eating.
Thank you. And then just one final question. Is there such a thing as eating too much protein?
Yes, you can definitely eat too much protein. So if you eat more than your body needs, it kind of puts more work on your kidneys and just more work on your body. And then you also could end up storing it as fat, because your body is going to end up, whatever it doesn't burn as energy, it will store as fat. So if you're eating, definitely eating more than your body needs, you can eat too much, definitely. Yeah, too much of anything, even water. So moderation is key.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. That looks like we answered all of the questions in the chat. Stephanie, I want to thank you one last time. We truly appreciated having you today. And before we end, we do have one last closing slide. So if you would like to learn more about Cancer Support Community Los Angeles, please feel free to visit our website at cancersupportla.org. And if you have any questions regarding this webinar or any of our services, please feel free to email us at info@cancersupportla.org. And lastly, we want to share about 2 of our in-person classes that we offer. We have a gentle yoga class that meets every Thursday from 1:30 to 2:45. And we also have an in-person restorative yoga class that meets every Tuesday from 1 to 2:15. We have our CICLA office address at the bottom. If you are interested in attending, you can feel free to scan the QR codes, and it will take you to our calendar where you can feel free to register. Stephanie, thank you one last time, and thank you to our participants for engaging. We hope to see you all at our next webinar. Thank you.